What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball, and more importantly, welcome back to our season preview series. This is a series where I'm breaking down all 30 NBA teams before the start of the regular season, and guess what? It's kind of the dead point in the basketball calendar. Nobody's really paying that close of attention to basketball, but if you're watching this video, you're probably like me. You're basketball sweat. You're trying to get ready for the season because it's really not that far away. You're interested in the teams and what they're going to look like this year, and that's what I'm here to help you with. And in this video, we're covering the Portland Trailblazers. Blazers, a team that's in an interesting spot as a franchise, but there's a lot of interesting little pieces to kind of talk about with this team, and they kind of had a fun offseason, so I'm here to talk about it. We'll start off with going over an intro, doing team goals. We'll talk about what their offseason looked like. We'll do a complete roster kind of analysis where we'll break down their salary cap space as well as their draft picks. We'll do some mock trades. We'll go through rotational ideas, lineups, and then finally finish with a standings prediction at the very end of the video. But before we get into all that, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. Again, it's not the biggest time of the year for basketball, so I don't expect these videos to get a ton of views, but in any way you can help out, I highly recommend watching the other season preview videos. There's even more than you see on the screen out by the time you're watching this one, because I pre-record all of these videos, so please have fun with them, and yeah, let's go talk about Portland. And that brings us back to the season preview spreadsheet. I like to kind of build these spreadsheets to kind of help articulate and visualize the stories that I'm trying to tell on YouTube. And you can actually get access to these spreadsheets if you want to. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is go down into the description of this video, join my Discord using the link. It's completely free to do so. Go to the announcements channel and you'll see a link to download this spreadsheet. I'm updating it every single day, so just go back whenever you need the most up-to-date file. But yeah, feel free to have some fun with it. Okay. On to Portland, that's enough marketing bullshit or whatever. We got a lot to talk about. We always start off with this intro tab where we kind of recap, hey, what did last season look like for this team? And then also, like, where are we going? The Trailblazers had kind of a, what do the kids say, a mid season. That's probably the best way to put it, is mid. Like, it wasn't great for most of the season. Like, the young players that maybe you'd want to see really develop on this team weren't necessarily going in the direction that you really wanted them to go in. They weren't like horrible either. At the end of the season, they kind of had like an uptick in wins where things really started to go well. Denny really started to go off for them, and you were like, okay, yeah, this guy kind of looks like the best player on this team right now. The problem is, like, the back half of the season, or not the back half of the season, the back end of an NBA season, so like March and April, aren't necessarily considered good examples of how good a basketball team really is, and we talk about that in a lot of different videos. But in essence, teams start scouting things a little bit less. They don't show their true colors for things. Certain players aren't playing the same spots or roles in a rotation. It's not a good sample, and if you talk to most NBA people, they will tell you the same thing. And so, was it actually progress that was made at the end of the last season? Kinda hard to tell, right? But looking at this team now, they find themselves in kind of a similar situation, is what I'm going to say. We're hoping for certain players to show their stuff and be like, hey, these are guys that we can kind of actively build around, because ever since Damian Lillard's been gone, things have been pretty slow for Portland. They entered somewhat of a rebuild, right? Hasn't been too long, but we still kind of find ourselves in that spot. So last season, 36-46 for the old Portland Trailblazers. I've got them as a rebuilding team still. And you know what, let's talk about the different franchise statuses you can have in this series. If you're new, basically, these are the 5 different categories. I've got selling teams, so teams actively trying to blow it up and kind of reset their franchise. I've got rebuilding teams, which are teams that are kind of trying to find those couple core pieces that they want to build around. I've got Portland there because while they have like some interesting young players, none of them have really established themselves as like guys worthy of building a team around yet. So I've still kind of got them in this rebuilding stage. The growing stage means you've found those key players that you want to build the base of your team with, and you're kind of waiting for them to kind of grow up. You're putting the right players around them, making little moves to turn yourself into a contender. Contending teams, obviously trying to win a championship. And then the who the fuck knows teams. There's always a couple of those in the NBA. We've done a couple of them already at this point in the series. I don't have them in the who the fuck knows exactly. I did think about it, but to me, this team still is more of a rebuild because they did trade like their best player in Lillard, right? And so you enter into a rebuild, and they haven't necessarily gone all in since then. They've made some interesting like kind of moves to pick up some assets here or there, but I feel like they belong in the rebuilding category, which you'd rather be there than the who the fuck knows. You'd always want to be in one of these four rather than this one. I say this as a Bulls fan, man. It doesn't mean I don't have questions about where this team is going. I think they probably have some questions too, but I've got them as a rebuilding team currently. We're still trying to figure out who those guys are. Goals. Well, speaking of that, let's get the young guys on the court, man, because we have some interesting young players on this team, and I think a lot of them are going to have very prominent roles on the team this year. So let's get them on the court. Let's figure out, hey, are we going to be able to enter into that growing stage? Are any of these guys going to show us something to where we can be like, okay, let's spend a little bit of money. Let's get some role play, like the right role players around these guys. Let's kind of try to figure it out, see if we can't be a playoff team or something. Or do we have to keep searching? Do we need to kind of bottom out a little bit more, try to get a top end draft pick? That's kind of the deciding point right there. Next goal, let Scoot play with real players in a real system. Out of all the players on this team, I've evaluated a lot of them in a pretty professional sense. Scoot Henderson has a lot of ability, man. He really does. I think he's a really interesting prospect. But up to this point, I don't think the Portland Trailblazers have done a very good job of supporting him. And if I'm being honest, it's been a flaw of this franchise for a very long time. It's something that I often criticize them for. They like to take players and not put them in situations where they're actually going to find like real success. They're just not that good at it. I can't say that the franchise doesn't try to put people in the right places, because they've shown in the past, like, hey, we will make deals to like go and like we'll trade picks or whatever. We'll do what we need to do to bring in talent that we think is going to help, but they're not very good at picking that talent, and they often, I feel like, end up hurting some of those younger players. Scoot Henderson just has not had the right talent around him up to this point to even, help him do the couple things that we saw him do really well before coming into the NBA. And that's, play in transition, be a distributor, play in the pick and roll, like get to the rim, things like that. He's constantly had guys in his way. So let's try to get some real players and a real system around Scoot so we can figure out if this motherfucker can play some basketball at the NBA level, right? And then I've got trade non-essential depth players. This team has a bunch of other like interesting role players that don't necessarily fit with any sort of scheme that they're trying to run right now that other teams would probably value. Get rid of them. Like send them elsewhere. Like you did that a little bit this offseason. Let's finish the job. Let's finish the job. Let's get rid of some of those unnecessary pieces. But now that we've talked about all those goals, I want you guys to keep those in mind as we kind of move throughout the rest of the video, because they're going to be important. But let's move on to their offseason, because there was a lot of moments from this offseason. Alrighty, the off-season tab here. If you guys have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you've probably seen the off-season tab. Basically, we break the off-season down into 3 different sections. You have drafted players, so players drafted by the team that are going to be on the full-time roster this year. Player departures, guys that were on the full-time roster at the end of last season that will no longer be on it this year. And then players brought in. These are the new or somewhat familiar faces that are going to be on the team this year that joined via like trade or free agency or whatever it is. So these are the guys that the fans got to learn kind of the names and traits of or whatever. But let's start off with the draft. The draft was weird for Portland, to say the least. If you guys are curious at all, I for my company that I run a basketball statistics and consulting company. One of the things that I do as a service is an NBA team can hire me, and I have been the past couple of years, to come in and be a scout and, evaluate talent or whatever. And I made videos on a lot of those kind of scouting performances or whatever for a lot of the rookies coming in this year. It's a very successful series, so you can go watch them. I only did first round talent, what I deemed to be first round talent in these videos, and not necessarily what I deemed, but guys that I figured would go in around the first round. That's why there's slightly over 30 videos in this series. There is not a video on Yang Hansen Yang, whatever order you want to put the names in. You can do the Chinese version of it or the American version. It doesn't matter to me. But Hansen Yang is, I've been calling him up to this point. I did not think he was going to go in the first round, and if you ask most people around the NBA, they're with you. Portland Trailblazers fans, you guys went up and got Hansen Yang, who, Chinese big man, got good size. He's got some interesting skills and kind of like the playmaking game, plays with a lot of energy, right? But not like that athletic, not necessarily like the most mobile of a big man, and I wouldn't call him like a great rebounder. He doesn't really have an outside shot. I know we've all seen like clips of him doing some cool stuff here and there, but I don't know. When I evaluated him, I'm going to keep it real. I said I wouldn't put this guy in the NBA. I saw long-term potential. I'm like, hey, draft him in the second round, send him back to China, let him play for a little bit there, play against the pros, and then maybe in a year or two you take him back, because that could be kind of interesting, right? Let's see him grow up a little bit. But Portland took him with the first-round draft pick, which had a lot of us very stunned. I can say for a fact, I know that there was a story that went out where Portland was like, oh, we knew these teams were going to take like him if we let him fall to there in the late first round. Nope, I can confirm to you that that's not true. I've talked to a lot of those people. They're like, no, I don't know where that story came from. I mean, we evaluated him, but no, we were not going to take him that high. So I didn't understand. I didn't understand why they went to move up to get him. And I hope it's clear. I hope the kid like shows out to everybody in Portland, looks like fucking geniuses. But like, here's the thing. Even if he plays well, you didn't need to trade up and like go get him. You could have just waited and like gotten him probably in like the early second round or something like that, because I just don't think anybody was going to touch this guy. And I'd have some real questions if this guy just started like dominating the league. I'd be like, how did we miss like all of this? Like what is he showing to Portland that none of the rest of us got to see? Because I'll just be honest, that I didn't talk to really any scouts that evaluated him that well. So I don't know, but sometimes all it takes is a couple people in a front office to make a decision, and that's what can happen, and we're going to be rooting for Hanson Yang this year. I want to see this guy kick some ass. But anyway, that's the draft. Player departures. You got some notable names here at the beginning. DeAndre Ayton, who, counting-wise, puts up some pretty good numbers for you. Dude can give you 20 and 10 any single night. Like, right? Great athlete. We all know, though, that defensively, sometimes you'd always want a little bit more out of him. But his biggest thing is this dude plays kind of like the least efficient style of basketball ever, where he's constantly around the free throw line, just kind of operating around there. He doesn't necessarily pick and pop. He doesn't pick and roll. That's not exactly what he does. He just kind of gets in the way and wants to get the ball. But he's pretty good at what he does, right? Like he's good at operating around those areas. He does put up good numbers. It's just, it doesn't necessarily help a team win basketball games. We talked about Scoot Henderson and him. Scoot Henderson's a pick and roll type of guy. It's no surprise that when you put in other more pick and roll or pick and pop type centers around him, Scoot just plays better. There's nowhere for Scoot to go, like in his top play style when DeAndre Ayton's just kind of floating around the free throw line at all times. It just doesn't work. And he's going to the Lakers now. They ended up buying him out, so you're still kind of paying Ayton this year, but whatever, it's not a big deal. I think it's better for the team's development if he's just not here this season, and that's just kind of what it is. Anthony Simons got traded. You were going to have to make a decision as to whether or not to pay Simons, and it wasn't going to make sense to do so. Very gifted offensive player. Last year wasn't quite as efficient, but again, this is kind of a weirdly structured team, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. Obviously very gifted as like a playmaker and a shooter and all of those things, but again, probably just better that we moved on from him, got the money out of here or whatever. You got a little bit of draft cap, or you didn't have to spend like any draft capital to go and get like Drew Holiday. That's kind of where the trade took place, was right here, and Drew Holiday's a nice asset to have. So I think it just made a lot of sense to move on from Anthony. You don't have to pay him, and other guys get to play now. So I think that's good. Delano Banton, big playmaker. I like Delano Banton. I really do. Like, he's a guy that I'd like to work with and develop a little bit more. Saw him in college up close and personal, and dude was a monster there. He really was, like most of these guys were in college. But he's had moments in his NBA career where he's looked really, really good. If he gets enough minutes on the court, last year there wasn't really anything to show for, and again, he didn't really get the minutes to do so, but he's going to be off the team this year. And then Jabari Walker, a guy that's kind of been like a bench player for them for a while. There were moments where I feel like Blazers fans were all about Jabari Walker. Now I feel like they don't care quite as much that he's gone. Pretty good defensive player, honestly, and not the worst rebounder. Shooting-wise, had his moments or whatever, but he doesn't create really anything for anybody, and so I don't know. He's not a player that personally excites me all that much, so I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world that he was let go, but he's going to Philly now, I believe, so going to get another chance to get some burn there. Players brought in. Okay. This is where things get a little bit interesting for Portland. Lillard is back. The Messiah is back. Potentially the best player that's like ever been a part of the Trailblazers. Not to say that there hasn't been other good players or whatever, but Damian Lillard's amazing, right? Damian Lillard's an awesome basketball player. We understand it. Last season, no exception to that. He was phenomenal, especially on the offensive end, defensive end. I know some people will be like, AVC, he's really not that good at it. Jeez, do you know how much this dude had to do offensively for this team? Give it a fucking break, right? This isn't like your little AAU tournament Billy, where everybody's got to play offense and defense all the time and everything. Like, this is big man shit, or this is like big grown men shit now, okay? Just fucking relax. Lillard's awesome. Unfortunately, tore his Achilles or whatever at the end of the season. So Lillard's going to miss this whole year, but he ends up getting bought out by Milwaukee in a really surprising move, and you get him on a discount for the next couple seasons. Lillard gets to come home, gets to hopefully be a mentor for these players while he's rehabbing, he gets to be close to his family again. Regardless of, like, if you're a Blazers fan or just like an NBA fan, it's just such a great story, because you know that this guy's really been struggling being away from his family ever since he got traded to Milwaukee or whatever, and it's important to remember that these are people at the end of the day, and when you've got stuff you're struggling with outside of work, it is just hard to do your work. So yeah, I've already seen him talking about, like, I get to go see, like, my mom now, and I get to take my kids to school and everything, and that just makes me happy, man. So I'm so happy to see him back in Portland. It might not make the most, like, basketball sense to bring Damian Lillard back into this rebuilding team, but fuck it, man. Like, everybody gets to bring out their Lillard jerseys again. We'll figure out the basketball fit later. Let's just enjoy the good story while it's here, right? That's how I'm gonna say it. There's the human side to things. Drew Holiday, guy you got in the Anthony Simons trade. You basically got kind of paid to take Drew Holiday in this instance because the Celtics couldn't afford to operate anymore because of the luxury tax or whatever. So you just get Drew Holiday. Again, Drew Holiday probably doesn't have like a long-term need to be on this team, but it's a great vet to have on your group. Still a highly effective basketball player, especially on the defensive end. Offensively took quite the stumble last year compared to his standards. His standards were very high, but still became much more of like an average offensive player. But regardless, you take Drew Holiday and you can probably flip him for a profit at the end of the season if he starts to show a little bit offensively again. Somebody will take him off of you, and he is worth having on the team right now. So good move, Portland there. Very good. And you have Blake Wesley, who he's kind of a wing that I'm not really sure what exactly he does all that well. There's not anything in particular that stands out, but hey, young guy that maybe will start to show something at some point. He basically got traded to like Washington and then cut, which says something when you get cut from Washington, unfortunately. But hey, we're rooting for Blake Wesley. He's on the team now. Maybe he'll show you a little something this year. But to recap this very weird offseason, I don't personally like the draft pick, especially because I didn't even mention this. You took a center last year that looks like maybe he could be a starting center for the future, and then you went and took another one. Didn't make any fucking sense to me. So I don't like the draft pick, but I'm rooting for him, and I hope he proves everybody wrong. Player departures, I think it's fine. I think all of this is more than reasonable, and I love the people you brought in for the story, for the veteran leadership, and the ability to flip the asset or whatever. I think it's great. I think it's awesome, so good for them there. Overall, I guess fine offseason. No complaints, really, is where I'd kind of put it. But all right, let's break down the rest of their roster now. Okay, roster breakdown tab. Now, this is the tab you guys are definitely familiar with if you've been on my channel for any amount of time. I use this tab all the time because it's kind of cool to kind of see a team's outlook in like totality or whatever. It's got a bunch of different factors that we're going to take a look at, like a team roster breakdown with salary and some stats. We're going to do a whole like team salary cap breakdown. We'll talk about the team's draft assets and what they're working with. And then the thing that nobody ever gets mad about, which people actually don't seem to get too mad about it anymore now that I've brought it up so much, but the depth charts right here. We're not even gonna do the Billy voice. I think we've shut Billy up. I think Billy has finally shut the fuck up, and he's starting to learn about how positions are kind of organized in the NBA. So you know what? A little bit of bullying back is good. I'm team a little bit of bullying. That's where AVC's official stance is on bullying. He is not anti-bullying. He's pro an appropriate amount of bullying. I think it's good to have societal standards and basketball standards. All right, let's break down the roster before your boy gets canceled anymore. I hope y'all try to cancel me. Oh no, I can't run my little YouTube channel that I do for a hobby anymore. Oh no. But anyway, AVC, what are these numbers right here? I don't know what these are. These are EPM numbers. EPM stands for estimated plus minus. Basically, this really, really advanced statistic that we have in basketball that tells you how good somebody is at offense, defense, and then overall as a basketball player. I then take those numbers and normalize them or index them, whatever you want to call it, so that you can get a 0 to 100 score comparing them against everyone else in the NBA. 0 being like the absolute worst at something, 100 being one of the best at something in the NBA. But it's my job to tell you, because I run the basketball statistics kind of consulting company. No statistic is perfect. There's so many little nuances and context points that you really need to understand why a stat is the way it is. So don't just take a stat as gospel. Like, really do some critical thinking. Look at why something is the way that it is. If someone's not performing well defensively, it's like, okay, are they being put in a bad position? Do they have poor defensive players around them? Have they ever shown they're good at defense before? That's what a good analyst does. So I encourage you all to kind of look at those numbers this way, but they're pretty good for helping us tell a story. Okay. We already talked about Drew Holiday, the most expensive guy in the team. Jeremy Grant, oh boy. We knew this contract probably wasn't going to be good when the Trailblazers first did it. Starting to look worse and worse, unfortunately, for Jeremy. Jeremy Grant did not have a very good basketball season last year. I guess he was at least like above average from 3, wasn't he? Let me make sure I can confirm that here. Where's Mr. Grant? Oh, geez, he's probably lower on here, isn't he? Yep, there he is. Yeah, we were above average from 3, but holy cow, first percentile at the rim, and like from mid-range doesn't matter quite as much, but the guy's not really playmaking for you at all. He's not rebounding necessarily, and I know the dude's not like 100% healthy, but like, oh boy, still a solid defensive player, more than solid, I should say, but it's like, man, you're paying $32 million for Jeremy Grant over the next 3 years. What's unfortunate is, like, at this point in a rebuild, like, you'd have to start considering, like, hey, what young players are you going to be paying at a certain point, and you're already operating kind of close to the luxury tax. So if you could find any way to get off of Grant's contract, I think it'd be great. I don't know. I just don't think that it's really necessary at all. Denny Advia. I love Denny, man. I'm still so upset. I really wanted the Bulls to take him the year that they took Patrick Williams. I said I want Denny or Obi Toppin, and I was right about taking either of those over Denny or over Patrick Williams. I'm so sorry, Pat. I really want you to do well, but you're not. Denny really showed some stuff last year. Honestly, the last 2 years, after being traded for no apparent fucking reason from the Washington Wizards over to the Portland Trailblazers, they just gifted him for whatever reason to Portland. A young player on a phenomenal contract that was starting to show, like, hey, this guy can really hoop. He really showed he could hoop, especially on the offensive end for the Trailblazers last year. More than solid shooter, nice playmaker, right? One of the best transition players we got in the NBA. Extremely tough. Like, he could be a little bit better at, like, finishing at the rim and everything. But here's the thing, right? Here's context points. Because if we go right here, and this is just a theory that I have more so than anything. So Denny at the rim, close to league average or whatever, which for someone that's coming like from the perimeter and stuff, the 40th percentile, not the worst thing, honestly. But here's what I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet that there's not a lot of great shooting at the rim in general on this team outside of the big men, right? Yep, after Shaedon Sharpe, who he can just jump over everybody, it's pretty rough on this team. And these are all guys that you would think would be pretty solid at getting to the rim. And I think that's just because, like, Ayton was hanging around there so much, man. It clogs everything up. You're running into more people. There's no clear lanes to the rim. So I feel like we can get a more efficient Denny even this year. And he was crushing it in Eurobasket this summer. He's looking really good. A lot of people think that he could make his first all-star team this summer. And I truly think that he could. And defensively, I actually think he's better than this number would suggest as well. I think he's got a pretty good read on things. He makes some mistakes, but he makes a lot of big defensive plays as well. So I have a lot of high hopes for Denny this year. Really do. Already talked about Damian Lillard. Robert Williams, Time Lord. He hardly played last season, as per usual, with Rob Williams. If he's healthy at all this season to start the year, trade him. Please trade him. Just get rid of him. You don't need him on the team. This is one of the guys where we said trade the unnecessary depth pieces. It's only a matter of time before this guy falls apart. Again, he's awesome defensively and gets a lot of rebounds, but there's nothing else to talk about with him just because he's always injured. Matisse Thybulle, hurt for most of last season. Traditionally, phenomenal defensive player, a guy that we think could be like a DPOY type candidate at points because he's so good there. In very limited minutes last year, was good from 3, but traditionally he's not, so I'm not going to tell you he's good at shooting the 3 ball, but hopefully a guy that can contribute more this year because he is an elite defensive player and he doesn't need the ball at all. Scoot Henderson, we talked about Scoot a lot at different points in this video. yeah, maybe not the greatest season that you wanted from Scoot, but still showed some of those flashes where he went on some runs where it's like, yeah, he's one of the better pick and roll players in the NBA. And it's like, let's get him in some situations where DeAndre Ayton's out of the way. We're running a system where he has a little bit of spacing around him. Because I don't know if you've noticed, not a lot of great shooting on this team traditionally. So it's like, okay, can we put him in a situation where it's kind of fair to grade him at a certain point, right? Because this team is not doing a good job of helping the young player that they took, right? What's the point of taking someone with like he was the third overall pick, right? Yeah, because it was Wemby, Brandon Miller, him, right? Like, what's the point of taking a guy like that and then just not helping him? I can't comprehend why teams do shit like that. It's just, it's moronic to me. Hopefully things will be better this year, but we can only hope. Shaedon Sharpe showed for the first time in me evaluating him that there was kind of something worthwhile to continuing the experiment. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I just didn't really understand Shaedon Sharpe and like what people are really excited about. I understand that we all kind of like wet ourselves whenever he throws down a crazy dunk or whatever, but that doesn't mean you're an interesting prospect. Has yet to be efficient still in the NBA, still very young. I would kind of hope that we start to see a little bit more consistency coming into this season with that kind of stuff. But defensively hasn't been a good player up to this point. Again, outside of like kind of just going over people to score, which is great. He doesn't really create for people or anything. So I'm like, I don't know what to make out of this player, but there were some points last year where things started to look a little bit more interesting. And I use the word a little very intentionally because it's just a little for me, but interesting prospect nonetheless that we're going to try to get some minutes this year. Donovan Clingan. Ooh, I like Donovan Clingan. I really, really do. Last year was not a very good rookie class, but I figured there was a couple guys that I'm like, yeah, these guys could be nice starters in the NBA, and Donovan Clingan was one of them. Coming out of UConn, I was like, hey, I got this guy as like the third or fourth best prospect in the class. Portland ended up taking him, and I think you could have a center for the future here. Defensively and rebounding-wise, he's great. But what's so interesting is dude was not in shape at all last season. I don't know what happened. If you guys go back and watch like his freshman tape at UConn, you're like, wow, look at how mobile this like 7'1", 7'2" guy is. Holy cow. Like we all as scouts were like, wow, this is awesome. Looked a little bit slower the year after that at UConn, but still fine. Last year, I don't know what was wrong with him. I don't know if there's an injury he's dealing with behind the scene or what, but he just looked so out of shape. So you got a good defensive player, good rebounder, shot blocker, all of that stuff in a very out of shape young Donovan Clingan. Cool, right? Cool. Definitely needs to get better at like finishing around the rim, stuff like that. But we saw some of the interesting flashes in him last year where you could run some hub offense through him and you could see the playmaker in him. He stepped out and hit a couple threes every once in a while. And you're like, okay, there's a little bit of dynamicness to this kid. So I hope that they can kind of start to bring it out of him because I think you could get something kind of cool there. Already talked about Hanson Yang. Chris Murray, good defensive player, doesn't do anything for you offensively, though, unfortunately. And that's what I got for you with Chris Murray. We already talked about Blake Wesley, Rayan Rupert. Again, not really anything to write home about as far as him goes. I think he's an okay defensive player, and okay is maybe me being a little bit generous, but offensively there is nothing that this guy really contributes right now. Duop Reith, I like Duop. I think he's a cool little like reserve big man for a team. Doesn't necessarily do the big man things that you'd ask him to do, but I feel like when I say whenever, it's small instances, right? You get him into more like pick and roll type scenarios. I know he doesn't always like to do that, but I think when you make him do it with Scoot Henderson, you've seen that's some of the best that both of them have looked. So coach, maybe try to do that. Maybe try to do that a little bit more. Just make your players do the things that they're good at, rather than the other things. So just my suggestion. And then here at the bottom, not a guy we have to talk about. No, it's Toumani Camara, and we love Toumani Camara. Very fun player that I don't even remember evaluating this guy coming into the draft. I just remember he was part of a trade, I believe, and that's how he ended up in Portland. And I was like, who the fuck is this? And dude's he's been awesome. Like, it's not like he's a superstar or anything, but Kamara's cool, man. Really, really good defensive player that can step out and hit 3-pointers or whatever. He doesn't need the basketball, but has started to show like, hey, I know where to be offensively at all times. Like, I can catch the ball and like rip and go towards the hoop and like make a little floater and make the next pass. I'm like, okay, Tomani, I see you, dog. Do your thing, G. So yeah, we really like Kamara. Definitely a guy that you want kind of being as part of your future. The 3-and-D wings are super valuable, and you might just have one in him, which is great. And then we finally have about $25.8 million here in dead cap, one of these being DeAndre Ayton for 1 year. I don't actually remember who this other person is that you've kind of stretched over the next 4 years, but pretty non-consequential overall. But this money will obviously fall off next season, along with some other money here that you might or might not want or whatever. Some guys here, you'll have to make a Shaden Sharp decision at some point, Scoot decision potentially this summer. So we really got to do some shit, man. We really got to do some shit and try to figure out if these are guys that we want to keep around. So that's going to be a big goal for the team this year. Obviously, just taking a look at the depth chart, the center position's got a lot of intrigue going on with it, and you should probably feel pretty fine with Klingon being your center this season. And then, yeah, a lot of question marks. We'll see if Robert Williams can walk this year. The forward spot, you probably feel pretty good in terms of having NBA level talent there, especially with Denny and Kamara. Matisse Thybulle, you hope, is back in form this year. Jeremy Grant, let's hope it doesn't look quite as bad this next year. And then at the guard spots, like, yeah, it's fine between Drew and Scoot. Those will be your primary like ball handlers. You probably don't want Drew having to do a ton of that at this point in his career, but again, I'll be pretty surprised if he's on this team post deadline. So this gives Scoot a lot of opportunity to go out there and do his thing. By the way, Denny's going to want the ball a decent amount this year as well, because when he was in Washington, they did what Portland is doing with Scoot Henderson right now, where Washington was like, hey, yeah, we're drafting this guy. He's like 6'9", and he can kind of like handle the rock and like play make and stuff like that. And they were like, oh, great. So like, is he going to get to have the ball? And Washington was like, no, why would we do that, you silly goose? And then they started giving him the ball at the end, and they were like, wow, Denny's kind of good. And then they traded him for no fucking reason. So we're not going to make that mistake. We're giving Denny and Scoot the ball, and we're getting people. We're going to try to get some spacers around them. At least that's what they should do. Get some people they can run the pick and roll with, shit like that, and go be their best selves. So there's a lot of opportunity here this year is kind of what I'm trying to say, I suppose. Next thing we're going to take a look at is the team's salary cap space. So let's go zoom in and take a look at that. If you're new to my videos or just don't know how the NBA salary cap works, basically there's 4 levels to things. This is a quick rundown of them. The salary cap line in general, which the Blazers have crossed, that's why this number is at 0. And once you cross that, you can only re-sign your own players to anything more than a minimum contract. There are exceptions to that rule, but it's not that important to cover those in this video. The luxury tax line, that's where things start to get scary. We are only $1.5 million away from that line. Once you cross that line, your team gets way more expensive to operate, and every consecutive year you spend in there, well, yeah, then the compound interest kind of starts, and that's when it gets very, very scary, and that's how you end up with Drew Holiday having to get traded from the Celtics, because they wanted to keep him, but they're like, we literally can't afford to keep him on the team anymore. We have to move him. So the Blazers only being $1.5 million away and not even guaranteed to be a playoff team, a little bit scary, right? A little bit scary. Again, Drew Holiday, potentially going to move him this year, so you might be able to save a little bit of money there. The Jeremy Grant money is pretty unnecessary, and then you've got a lot of guys making solid money right here. That's why we said we wouldn't mind trading a Robert Williams, maybe a Matisse Thybulle or whatever. You got to make a Shaden Sharp decision at some point. Are you going to pay him or are you going to not? You're operating really close to that line. Then you have the first and second apron. If you want to read all the implications of these, pause the video. I've got them up on the screen for you right here so you can see them. But basically, these are newer things that the NBA added to kind of even out the competitiveness of things. And just know that the further you go into those aprons, the more the NBA chokes you out and says, you can't make these trades. You can't sign players like this. You can't use this exception. You can't do this until you kind of get hard capped and it's too scary and you have to move back down again, kind of like what the Celtics are having to do. But yeah, that's their salary cap situation. I wouldn't call it good. I definitely wouldn't call it good. It's good that they're not in the luxury tax right now because this is not a guaranteed good basketball team. But we definitely want to shrink this number even more and get further away from the luxury tax. I think that would be beneficial to this group. Because if you do have to start rebuilding a little bit more at this team, if by the end of this year, let's just say Scoot's not looking like it's going to be a thing, maybe Shaden isn't either, and you just kind of maybe got like a Denny and Kamara still kind of looking like what he's looking like, you probably want to start going backwards a little bit more again and trying to get a couple more draft picks. And in that case, you got to follow the rebuilding guide. You got to take on bad contracts and stuff like that. So you need the space. You need the space to operate. Speaking of draft picks, obviously not every pick that they could potentially have is listed here, and that's because if other people own the rights to the picks and there's protections on them, I don't list them here. These are just kind of like their tradable assets. More likely than not, well, maybe not, honestly. I believe the Bulls have the Blazers pick this year, but it's like lottery protected or something. So I guess if the Blazers find their way into the playoffs, they don't have a first-round pick this year, and I guess there's worse things. I guess you made the playoffs, so something went right in a very competitive Western Conference. But overall, this team's got a solid amount of its assets going forward. They have their draft picks, so if you do have to rebuild, that's good. They've got a bunch of second-round picks that they can use to go help move players around as needed. Maybe some of these are going to be needed to kind of move a Jeremy Grant contract or something. I don't know, but draft pick wise, you're in a pretty solid spot. But with all that being said, I mean, we're talking about all these trades. Let's start making some trades, man. Like we said, it'd be cool if we could move Jeremy Grant. Not sure exactly how we're gonna do that. We can go take some looks, I suppose, but otherwise maybe try to make like a Robert Williams move is another good one. Maybe a Drew Holiday one, we'll see. But yeah, we want to start freeing up a little bit of cap space and maybe just try to find some better role players to put around our Scoots and our Denny's. I think that's probably the way that we want to go. So let's move on to the trade portion of the video. Alrighty, and that brings us back here to Fanspo. Fanspo, for those of you that don't know, basically this really, really cool website where you can do these like mock trades, mock drafts, like build big boards, all this really, really fun stuff. We really love Fanspo. I'm not sponsored. I just think the website's super cool and well made. Here's the problem though. It's a free website, and I think the people that run it don't necessarily have a huge incentive to come on here and update it all the time. And yeah, they haven't updated their trade machine to include like rookies and stuff now, so it's not exactly usable because the numbers aren't accurate. And we're not making fun of Fanspo and like trying to shit on them. This is more so our plea because we love your website so much. Can you please update the stuff, please? We love you. Please come back. So instead, going to use Spot Track. Spot Track's got a beta version of a trade machine that you can use. Not great, not quite as good as Fanspo, but it gets the job done. So that's what we're going to use. But anyway, let's see. What do we got here? Tradable players. So I've got money in Jeremy Grant that I definitely would like to move. But here's my thing. If Jeremy Grant is to be moved, I think that that's a pretty complicated thing. Either we have to dump him to like a Brooklyn Nets somehow, which that's a lot of money to dump, right? That's the thing. Like, this is not a simple one. This is $32 million. Or like a star player has to be like on the move or something. And it's hard, man, because he's just not playing as good. So maybe if he starts to play okay again, maybe something happens, but I don't know. Robert Williams, again, we have to hope that he's healthy and playing well at the start of the season. Then we should try to flip him immediately. Potentially Thibault, as much as we love his defense and everything. If the dude can't hit an outside shot for us right now, I don't need him around. I'd rather try to get an asset for him because it's probably not worth bringing back anyway. I'd say consider Shaden Sharp, but I'm not going to make that a priority for this video. So otherwise, after that, maybe Reith is another one that you could try to trade. Maybe someone else needs another big. Bigs are kind of hard to come across right now. So I think that's it. Well, Drew Holiday as well. But again, Drew Holiday is going to be more so a situation where like a contending team tries to bring him in or something like that. Maybe someone needs another guard to get them through the year. So we have quite a bit of money to work with. I feel like Robert Williams is the clear, obvious person to start because one, we just don't need this big. Like if we took a first-round pick on Hanson Yang, I should be able to throw him on the court this year. So let's free up the minutes for him to do so. But yeah, I'd rather get some sort of asset for him, and let's figure out what that is because it's got to be cheaper than the $13-ish million that he is. So what are we going to do? Man, because who would want Robert Williams, right? It's going to have to be a team that's trying to win basketball games, that's okay with taking the risk on health, but that more so is probably just going to affect what we can get back for him. Jared Vanderbilt. Interesting. That's not going to help us at all. I'd like to get a decent role player, but if Robert Williams is healthy, the Lakers would definitely like him, man. Like, he put him next to Luka. Ooh, boy, that'd be nice. We probably don't have to give up a first or like they wouldn't have to give up a first to make it happen either. So let's just experiment real quick. Let's just experiment. I'm not positive that that's something we want because, again, Jared Vanderbilt does not help us right now. Let's turn on trade deadline mode. So Jared Vanderbilt, we could take on like a Gabe Vincent or something instead. Because they don't want Gabe Vincent next to it. Or we could take on Maxi Kleba. Ooh, now this is interesting because they really don't want Maxi Kleba. And then I trade them Robert Williams here. This trade should work. Why? Why does it work? The Los Angeles Lakers, fuck. God damn it, the first apron. Okay. They got to get rid of a little bit more. And the problem is our roster is full too. Why do we got guys like Ryan Rupert on the team? I just don't understand. Okay, and it's tough because we're operating really close to that line as well. So do we have to get like a third team involved? We probably do, and now I have to start all over spot track. So let's do Portland, let's do the Lakers, and who do we want to get involved? What bad team? Let's get Utah involved. They like to help the Lakers facilitate moves. So let's do Maxi Kleba. I gotta turn on trade deadline mode again, for fuck's sake. Maxi Kleba, I know you don't want him on the team. I will take Maxi Kleba on. He will be my vet. Thank you very much. We are sending Robert Williams over to the Lakers. And now, what was it? The Lakers need to send somebody else off this team. The Jazz could probably use one more guard on the team. So you could either do Vincent or you could do Vandy. I'm going to say Vincent instead. Send him over to Utah. So where are we at now? Utah needs to send something over. I don't know. Are we able to send like cash to the Lakers or something like that? That doesn't work. What is it? Utah needs to send something to Portland. Okay, so let's do that. So why does this trade fail? You exceeded the allowable incoming money. Yeah. Okay, so I don't necessarily need to do the cash now, but we need to send something back. Okay. So I'm going to remove this. What player am I going to trade someone? Kevin Love is going to be bought out most likely. Svi Mikhailuk, Senzabaugh. So let's just say Svi Mikhailuk gets sent here. Is this not going to work or whatever? It's so stupid, kind of like how this thing works or whatever. So you send him over to Portland. This trade currently fails. Why is that? You're over the allowable income by this much, by about $3-ish million. Okay, I understand. So Kevin Love would also have to like go back to the Lakers or something like that, which that's going to be too much money then for them, right? I don't know. That actually works. But we go up in salary, which is the problem. So we'd have to buy out Maxi Kleba, which he's probably not going to want to do because nobody's even going to pick him up. So I'm not sure that that's actually something we can execute on them. This is why I was saying, like, man, it's unfortunate that you gave Grant that contract, man, because we'd like to help out in making some of these moves, but we're so close to the luxury tax. So I don't know. Maybe we should try to trade Drew Holiday instead. Let's try that first. Who wants Drew Holiday? Who could use a Drew Holiday? And how many more years of Drew Holiday is it as well? It's 3 years. Okay. So it could be like a young and upcoming team that's kind of trying to make some noise. That could be where you go with a Drew Holiday. The Bucks would probably like him back as well. Is there any way we can help the Bucks out? Probably not, but I'll give it a chance, because why the hell not? What do we got going here? Let's do trade deadline mode. I'm sure they'd love to have Drew back. It'd be funny if he kind of went on this whole little shebang like that. I take it we can't just take like Kyle Kuzma back, can we? Yep, it currently fails. The Bucks are only over by 1.4 million. Wow. Really? Okay, so if we take back Chris Livingston and then just like cut him. Okay, and I know we don't want Kyle Kuzma. He doesn't necessarily help us win basketball games either. Do the Bucks have any picks that they can send us? They do. They do potentially have picks that they can send us. Ooh-wee. I wouldn't mind having one of these picks. Oh, we could get our own pick back in 2030. That's not the worst thing, because we don't know what kind of spot we're going to be in at that point. We get like a first round pick for this or something. That's not so bad. And we save some money. We're in just a better operating space. I'd say that's probably worth it for what we got in Drew Holiday. Okay. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. Is there anyone else we want to try and trade right now? Thibault, no. Let me just look and see if there's anyone else that we can kind of help get out of like a weird spot financially or whatever. No, not necessarily. I don't think so. I don't know who else would really benefit from like a Matisse Thybulle or a Robert Williams in this situation. So I think we're going to be good for now. These are just ideas, obviously, for trades kind of going into the year, and more so just concepts that you should be looking for this team to kind of try to execute on this year. But let's move on to the rotations. All right, rotations, question mark. I always put the question mark on just because, look, I'm not in the practices, I'm not in the training camps or whatever, and that's where a lot of this stuff kind of gets established, right? This is just me kind of evaluating these guys and saying, hey, this is how good I think they were last year, and based off of all that, this is how many minutes I'd kind of play them. And these are like real exercises we go through as coaches where we're like, hey, on average, how many minutes do we want Scoot playing a night versus like Klingon and all of that whatnot, right? So just know that that's kind of what we're looking at. We also have some EPM numbers over here, which are just these EPM numbers that we've now weighted by how many minutes they're playing to give us a team view of things. I've got Scoot and Denny playing 33 minutes a night on average. I'm giving them their time, man. We got to figure out if these motherfuckers can ball. That's what we're doing with them. Tamani Kamara getting quite a few minutes too. Klingon's going to play his way into damn shape this season. Like, let's get him out there. Drew, despite being a very effective player, he's playing starter level minutes, but not a ton, because I got other motherfuckers I'm trying to get out on the court right now. I'm trying to see what they're going to do. I obviously want him out there to help those guys, but let's also try to keep him healthy and flippable, stuff like that, right? Shaden Sharp, he's going to be playing more minutes than him, so he's kind of more so the other starter with this group that we care about, but obviously Drew's going to be a big part of this team. Also getting Matisse Thybulle out there a decent amount. And then I didn't go any deeper than 9 men with this one because I've got so many guys that like I want to get solid minutes to this season that I kind of felt better doing this. We do have Robert Williams out there. Try to show him off. And again, if he's good, flip him. Great. Jeremy Grant out there to play some defense. That's it. We're paying him this much money. He gets to be the 9th man. There you go. Guys like Chris Murray, Hanson Yang, Reith, and all of that. Obviously, not a ton to go along there. And Lillard's hurt for the season, right? So that's where he is. So that's kind of the rotation that I would imagine game to game. Lineup wise, this is where I get just a little bit more creative and kind of free ball a little bit more. These are just ideas for rotations to kind of throw out in the game for various reasons. First one, Scoot Plus. This is me trying to optimize Scoot Henderson, and it's not exactly what I want, but it's something. So you got Scoot out there with Drew, who prefers to play without the basketball at this point, can still step out and hit an outside shot and take on some ball handling responsibilities as needed, with Matisse Thybulle, who, again, will step outside if nothing else. We hope that he can shoot. That's a lot to ask out of a guy that traditionally hasn't been a good shooter. But again, at least he'll be out there. Tamani Kamara does space the floor for us, doesn't need the basketball. And then Robert Williams, true pick and roll big to play next to Scoot. Let's give it a shot, man. Let's see if we can't get Scoot rolling. Then we got the Denny lead right here. So this is Denny playing point guard now. Let's let him kind of cook. I've also got Shaden Sharp out there with him as kind of a high flyer to play in transition with him. You got some defenders out here that'll be good at cutting towards the hoop that he can play make off of. And then Klingon, who I think could be an interesting guy for them to kind of run a little bit of two-man game with, because they're both pretty solid passers, and there's a lot of times where I see Denny kind of give it up to a high post man in Eurobasket and then like cut afterwards. I want to take advantage that we can kind of kill two birds with one stone. And then Klingon Hub, we talked about it earlier. That sounds like a website you shouldn't visit, honestly, but we're not gonna talk about that. And you'll actually notice a lot of these lineups have pretty solid numbers behind them, which is kind of cool. But again, this is me trying to be like, hey, can we get Klingon into some spots where he can be a little bit more of a playmaker, right? And kind of work on some of his developmental skills. So that's why I've got Drew Holiday as the point guard with this lineup. But Denny's still out there. He's still kind of going to be the primary ball handler. Shaden out there as well, cutting playing without the basketball because he doesn't necessarily create for others. So we're going to let him just get created for. And then Jeremy Grant out there as well, who can more so be roaming the dunker spot. I think that that's kind of interesting. So these are my 3 lineup ideas. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. But all right, with all that being said, this is where we move on to the standings prediction part of the video. All right, y'all know how this works. Basically, I'm going to click this button right here, and the Trailblazers are going to appear somewhere here, wherever I think they're going to finish this regular season. We've got top dog picked out. We've got the bottom teams picked out already, so they could be anywhere from not play-in at all to play-in team to playoff team. Where's AVC gonna have them? Drum roll, please. Drum roll. Never gonna get a sound effect for this shit. I've got the Trailblazers as the 11. I don't got them making the play-in, man. I think that some of the better things about this roster might get flipped this year, and that being like Drew Holiday. I think like a Matisse Thybulle, like Robert Williams when he plays is also kind of valuable, so I would hope you try to move these couple of guys this year, but who knows, maybe you get some better role players in, and maybe your young players start to show something. It's just, they're unproven, right? Like Klingon's unproven, Scoot Henderson is unproven, Denny, we hope is going to be great this year, but is Denny a borderline all-star in this ragtag group of people that aren't necessarily even like great for his play style going to go that far? I have my hesitations. So again, while it's nice to have Lillard back and everything, that's all cool and dandy. I'm not quite sure if this franchise has found the people worth kind of building around yet. We're going to try and see if that's the case here. Otherwise, I would say you kind of have to rebuild a little bit harder than what you were doing before. It didn't work really this first time. So reset a little bit further. You're in a decent enough spot to do so. Just that's kind of what I'm thinking about them. But obviously, rooting for them. Hope they do well this year. Would love to see Denny and Scoot just crushing the league this year or whatever, but for the time being, that's where I got them, which is not a fun place to necessarily be. But overall, this is where I pass it off to you guys. What do you guys think? Where do you think the Trailblazers are going to finish this year? I'd be more than curious to listen to your thoughts. But with all that being said, let's go read some of y'all's thoughts with the comments of the video. Alrighty, y'all, comment to the video is coming from our Denver Nuggets season preview right here. You know I had to go with Cowboy Jokic for this one. If you look very closely, you can see our sweet boy Christian Brown right here as well. But anyway, the comment to the video is coming from Fuck, why do you guys name yourselves this? I think you could realistically justify 2 through 4. This is me asking where he thinks the Nuggets could finish this year. The West is such a bloodbath. There's like 5 very realistic title contenders. So he's basically saying like, I think any of these teams can get you on any night. I think it's going to be really hard to see like many like 50+ win teams just because injuries are going to decide things, right? There's so much other talent. Hell, even he mentions like Giannis can still give you 60 on every night, even though his team isn't all that great, which is so true. So I really like the detail and the ideas behind this comment. I think that it's great. There was one other comment that I wanted to point out here from Cohen here that said, I'm going to have every little like explanation, what is this spiel, memorized at the end of this series. Yeah, no, I know that I say a lot of the same things kind of in these videos and it gets a little bit repetitive. Obviously, you can just skip over those, but watch it for my video retention numbers. Do it. But the reason I do it, and I think most of you know because you're not fucking morons, is because there's new viewers on every video. Not everybody's watching everyone. Some people are just watching because it's their favorite team on, and if I don't explain every little thing, then I'm gonna get some dumbass comments like, AVC, what are these numbers here? What are they? And I'll be like, well, these are EPM numbers, right? Then I didn't do my job explaining things in a video. So yeah, but I do feel like I'm teaching you guys something at the same time, which is great. And I know Cohen gets that here, and I think that that's great. Because look, you drive things into people and that's how they learn it. To this day, my college coach hated getting backdoored. So that sounds fucking crazy. But he just hated when people like would backdoor us in games. And to this day, like because we got punished for every backdoor, like we gave up like none of those in college or whatever, but to this day, if I see it happen in pickup, I like cringe a little bit when it happens because my body has like this visceral reaction, like I'm about to go run like sprints and stuff again, or like do lane shuffles or some shit like that. But anyway, thank you guys for the great basketball conversations. If you want to have more of them, go join the Discord, link is in the description right here. It's also how you get access to this fun spreadsheet that I'm updating all the time with new information, so just go download the most up-to-date version whenever you need it. But anyway, I appreciate you guys as always. Like, subscribe, comment, do all those things, boost these videos up, and share the video with your nana. Send her the video because I'm gonna be stopping by later. Don't ask why, but she might make me breakfast tomorrow. But anyway, I appreciate you guys, and let's try to crush it this week. All right, thanks so much. Bye.